Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today we'll be talking about 5 interesting facts about spaceports. Please remember to like and subscribe. Now let's get right into it. Fact 1. Location on Earth. The location of the spaceport is very important as it relates on Earth. You can't just willy-nilly put a spaceport anywhere you want. And you have to take into account the least amount of energy necessary to get the space payload into orbit. Believe it or not, there are certain places on Earth that are easier to reach and get into orbit than others. For example, near the equator is best for geosynchronous orbits. As a result, a lot of launch sites on Earth are near the equator or as close to it as possible. That way, the rocket could have the least amount of energy necessary as compared to launching from other locations on Earth. Other type of orbits, such as polar orbits, may not benefit as much launching from the equator because of the amount of energy necessary to get into such orbits. And so, the launch sites could be away from the equator, such as the Vandenberg Air Force Base. Let's get into the next fact. Fact 2. Israel has one. It may come to a surprise to you that Israel actually has a spaceport. Now, we're not talking about the rocket launch pad that a lot of nations have. We're talking about the Palmachim Air Base that you're seeing on this map here. This is a military base classified or publicly classified as a regular air base for military helicopter training and so forth. But everywhere you find on the web, this is actually a rocket launch site. And again, as I mentioned, there are a lot of different types of rocket launch sites, from the smallest to launching small rockets for weather observations, weather balloons, to very large ones that you see on TV for like SpaceX as an example. This one in Israel is for large rockets. It is designed to launch huge payloads into space, and so therefore it is a bona fide or rocket launch site, but in the state of Israel. Another thing I noticed is that this airbase is located in a fairly developed area, contrary to other rocket sites that are in the middle of nowhere for safety reasons, in case of explosions. Let's get into the next fact. Fact 3. New Zealand spaceport. Another cool thing is New Zealand actually also has a spaceport. And again, when I say spaceport, I mean a rocket launch site that can launch large payloads. Not just small rocket sites where small rockets are being used for military purposes or weather purposes and such. Another cool fact about the New Zealand spaceport is that it is really the only one in the southern hemisphere that can be used to launch large payloads. This rocket launch site is built by New Zealand and the United States jointly and is considered a private spaceport. So therefore it is not owned by the New Zealand government or the US government. I personally am very curious about the reason why they chose New Zealand as the spaceport location for their launch sites. Because right to the north of New Zealand are a bunch of islands, perhaps some are not inhabited, that would be great for rocket launches. Because A, it could be the middle of nowhere, so for safety, if the rocket explodes, the debris won't hit anybody. And of course the sound and all the noise that's associated with rocket launches. And second, it would be close to the equator. But again, perhaps the New Zealand spaceport isn't designed for geosynchronous orbit launches, and so this location may serve whatever purpose that they initially designed it for. Now let's get into the next fact. Fact 4. Mostly non-human missions. As I mentioned before, there are various types of rocket launch pads, from small ones to very large payloads to such as one you see here launching space shuttles. But if you take a closer look, even though there are tens of spaceports around the world by different governments in all various locations such as Iran, India, all these different locations have the capability to launch large rockets, but they're not used as such. In fact, almost all of them are used for military intercontinental ballistic missile launches. or maybe weather launches. But the majority of them are not used to launch human manned missions. It is very interesting that if you take a look, really only 3 countries have spaceports that are used to launch humans into space and beyond: Russia, China, and the United States. Beyond these 3 countries, no other countries have spaceports that are used to launch humans into space. Almost all of them are used to launch either military stuff or commercial satellite payloads, or again, other types of civilian or military applications that we just don't know about. And so you have to wonder, is it because the ones that are necessary for human launches need to have a different requirement or different configuration for the launch pads? We may never know. Or perhaps all those other countries don't care about going to space. They care about annihilating their enemies with huge powerful rockets. That's another sad part about the space race and the rockets. It's mostly used for destructive purposes rather than trying to conquer other planets. Now let's get into the next and final fact. Fact 5. Growing exponentially. If you take a look here, the number of rocket launches into space have been growing exponentially since the 1950s when the first rocket was launched. It is clear that humans want to get into space. We want to advance and create better, more powerful rockets so that it could reach the stars and beyond. I know in just the previous section I mentioned that a lot of the rocket launch sites are not really spaceports but more just military intercontinental ballistic missile launch sites. But commercial space is heating up, and as we've seen from SpaceX and other companies, private companies are now trying to reach space, send payloads into space, and even colonize the moon, Mars, and beyond. Governments, on the other hand, are still more interested in creating destructive rockets to attack their enemies. And so I think the space race is going to be led by the commercial enterprises. And as such, having a spaceport could be a great investment. As with anything about real estate, land is a finite thing. And so if you can imagine the future, maybe 100 years from now, all the prime optimal locations on land are taken for other space launches, spaceports will become a very high-priced investment in terms of real estate holdings. So keep that in mind when you're investing in real estate. Thank you so much for watching my video. Please remember to like and subscribe. See you next time.